Ma'am, I said it's not allowed on board. That's my son's insulin. Please give it back. The gate area at Dallas-Fort Worth hummed with rolling suitcases and flight numbers crackling through aging speakers. Bright windows burned with afternoon sun, shadows sliding across the carpet like slow waves. Grace Williams kept one arm wrapped around her shivering 12-year-old son, Marcus, as the flight attendant held a small medical pouch high like contraband. His lips were pale. Sweat stood on his forehead. His pump alarm blinked red beneath his shirt. A handful of passengers watched, some confused, some uncomfortable, but no one stepped forward. The flight attendant, Trevor Miles, tall and stiff in his pressed uniform, said quietly for only Grace to hear, "I've seen this trick before. You people always push rules." Grace's breath caught. Not loud, not shouted, but sharp as glass. Marcus leaned into her side, voice barely a whisper. "Mom, my sugar's dropping." Grace opened her purse with trembling fingers, searching for the backup injector. Empty. She had already used it in the rental car an hour earlier. They needed that insulin, his insulin, right now. Trevor turned toward the boarding door, preparing to toss the pouch into a disposal bin. Grace reached out, voice cracking. "Please check the medical clearance letter." "We followed every protocol." He didn't look back. A woman near the window gasped. A businessman lowered his phone. The flight number blinked across the gate screen. Final boarding. Time was closing like a fist. Marcus's knees buckled, and Grace caught him before he fell. Her pulse thundered. She stood straight, calm, controlled. She spoke one sentence that made Trevor freeze mid-stride. Grace reached into her pocket, thumb pressing against cool metal. A black leather badge case snapped open with a soft, unmistakable click, the sound of authority. The gold seal glowed in the gate lights. Special Agent Grace Williams, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Gasps rippled through the waiting area. Trevor stopped, color draining from his face. The pouch trembled in his hand. Marcus swayed, barely conscious. Grace's voice no longer shook. "Return the insulin." Now, around them, silence settled thick as storm air. Passengers watched, waiting to see if rules would protect a child, or if prejudice would hold the line instead. The clock beside the gate flicked to 5:42 p.m. Marcus exhaled a weak, ragged sound. This moment would change everything. Enjoying this? Tap subscribe for tomorrow's story. Trevor stared at the badge as if it might burn him. The leather case rested in Grace's steady hand, the gold seal clear, the photo unmistakable. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Marcus groaned. His legs wobbled, and he sagged against her. "Mom, I feel dizzy." That broke the spell. A murmur rose from the watching passengers. A man in navy blazer stepped closer. "Sir, if that's medication, maybe just let them." Trevor snapped, not looking at him. "This is a security issue. Please return to your seat." Grace's jaw tightened. She kept her tone level, almost gentle. "Flight attendant Miles, I'm a federal agent. My son is a type 1 diabetic. That pouch is his prescribed insulin, cleared through TSA with documentation. You are unlawfully interfering with necessary medical care." The words were calm. The meaning was not. Trevor's eyes flicked from the badge to the watching faces, then back. His fingers clenched around the pouch. "You can't talk to me like that. I'm just following policy." "Then quote it." Grace didn't blink. "Quote the policy that allows you to confiscate a child's life-saving medication after TSA clearance." He opened his mouth, closed it. The gate agent, a woman with tired eyes and a tight bun, hurried over from the counter. Her name tag read Linda. "What's going on here?" Trevor answered first. "This passenger is refusing to comply with carry-on guidelines. Liquid volume exceeds." Grace cut in, voice low, but clear enough for everyone to hear. "It's in a medically labeled container, declared at security, with a physician's note and TSA-approved ice pack. You can call TSA, or airport police, or your supervisor." She paused, just long enough. "Or you can hand me back my son's insulin before he passes out on this carpet." Linda looked at Marcus. His skin had taken on a grayish hue. Sweat beaded on his upper lip. His pump vibrated softly under his shirt. "Mom," he whispered, "it's 52. Linda frowned. "What does that mean?" Grace's eyes did not leave Trevor's. It means his blood sugar is falling fast. He could seize. He could stop breathing. Do you really want that headline attached to your airline? Someone behind him pulled out a phone, not discreetly this time. The lens hovered, recording. Another passenger stood, folding her arms, watching. Linda swallowed. Trevor, maybe we should. He shook his head, face flushing red. If I make an exception, we get written up. They always say it's medical when they want to sneak things through. I know how this works. The word hung in the air like a bruise. Grace's hand trembled once, then stilled. She slid the badge back into her pocket, but her presence seemed to grow, not shrink. Here is what's going to happen, she said. You are going to return my son's insulin. Then you're going to call your supervisor and document exactly what you just said and did. On record, Linda shifted, caught between fear and procedure. Ma'am, Agent Williams, if you could just sit and we'll sort this out. Marcus's knees buckled. This time he did fall, his body folding onto the thin airport carpet. A woman gasped. The phone in the crowd tilted to capture him on the ground. Grace dropped to her knees beside him, voice suddenly sharp. Marcus, stay with me. Look at me, baby. His eyes rolled slightly. He tried to focus. The pouch still sat in Trevor's fist. Everyone could see it now. The clear medical label, the doctor's name, the emergency instructions in bold print. Linda whispered, Trevor, give it to her. He hesitated, jaw clenched, pride battling with common sense. From the speakers overhead, the boarding call sounded again, cheerful and indifferent. Final boarding for Flight 378 to Washington, D.C. Passengers must proceed to Gate C-18 at this time. Grace looked up, her gaze razor-sharp. Because this was not just a flight. It was a mandatory trip. A closed-door briefing in D.C. in the morning. A case she had spent 2 years building. If they missed this flight, careers and investigations would be affected. If she lost her son, nothing else would matter. She rose from the floor in one fluid motion, leaving Marcus in the care of a kneeling stranger who had rushed forward. Her voice carried, not just to Trevor, but to the watching crowd. If my son loses consciousness, she said, I will not be the only one writing a report about what you did today. Trevor's fingers twitched around the insulin pouch, the decision poised on a knife's edge. Trevor's grip on the insulin pouch tightened, knuckles pale. For a moment, he looked less like an employee enforcing rules and more like a man cornered by consequences he never imagined facing. Grace stayed standing, spine straight, eyes locked on him. She didn't shout. She didn't plead. Her authority was quieter, sharper, something no badge alone could give. The stranger kneeling beside Marcus, a middle-aged teacher named Carolyn Price, checked his wrist with gentle fingers. He's clammy, breathing shallow. She looked up. He needs that insulin. Passengers shifted uneasily. Some stepped closer. Not confrontational, just present. Witnesses. Trevor swallowed, voice drained. You're all misunderstanding. I'm protecting the aircraft. If liquids get through without... Grace interrupted softly. Trevor, look at my son. He didn't. So she took a step closer, enough to make him feel the weight of her presence. He is a child. A sick child. And you are willing to risk his life over a container you could verify in 30 seconds with a phone call. Linda wrung her hands. I'll call the supervisor. Please, just let me get them here. Don't escalate this. But escalation was already here. It lay breathing weakly on the floor. Marcus's voice came out thin as thread. Mom cold. He curled slightly, arms drawn to his chest, body instinctively conserving what little glucose remained. Carolyn placed her jacket beneath his head and spoke quietly. Sweetheart, stay with us. Keep your eyes open. Trevor's gaze flicked again to the gathering phones. Fear crept into his expression, not compassion yet, but fear of documentation, consequences, headlines. He shifted his weight. The pouch trembled. Grace saw it. Almost enough. But not yet. She lowered her voice, meant only for him. I'm not here to ruin your career. I'm here to save my son. Give me the insulin. And we walk onto that plane quietly. No report. No complaint. The crowd held its breath. A lifeline had been offered. Trevor's jaw flexed. He looked at the pouch, then at Grace, then at the badge imprint faintly bulging in her pocket. His decision seemed to tilt toward reason. And then behind him, an older man in a worn baseball cap called out, "Just give her the medicine, man. Let the kid live." It wasn't angry. It was human. But Trevor stiffened, shoulders rising defensively. The crowd wasn't pressure. It was an audience, but he thrust the pouch back toward Linda instead of Grace. "Gate control will handle this. I'm not the villain here." Marcus whimpered. Grace stepped forward, slow, deliberate, but Linda drew back slightly with the pouch, caught between procedures and panic. Please give us 2 minutes. I'm calling the supervisor now." 2 minutes. Marcus might not have 2 minutes. Grace knelt beside her son again, brushing damp curls from his forehead. Her voice softened, full of a mother's breaking heart held together by will alone. "I'm right here, baby. Hold on." The phone recording crowd widened, forming a loose semicircle. Social media could make stories like this spread like wildfire. One upload, one caption, one child on a cold airport floor. A ripple of awareness passed through Linda. The pouch trembled now in her hand, Trevor noticed, and panic sparked in his eyes. He reached toward her, low and urgent. "Do not give it to them. I'm still the senior attendant. I give the clearance, not you." Passengers gasped. Someone whispered, "He's doubling down." And Grace realized something, a detail she had overlooked in the panic. Trevor didn't hate Marcus. He feared losing power. The insulin, the pouch, had become proof of control. Grace's next move would decide whether the boy received it in seconds or collapsed in front of them all. She stood again, slow and controlled, turning to the crowd, not for help, but for truth. Her voice rose, steady and resonant. "Everyone here has seen what's happening. My son's life depends on one choice. And that choice right now isn't mine." Trevor's eyes widened. Because the next move was his. 4 or 5 long seconds. Nothing moved. Not the bags, not the phones held aloft, not even Trevor's breath. The entire gate seemed balanced on a single decision in his hand. Then the airport supervisor arrived. A compact woman in a navy blazer approached at a brisk pace, badge lanyard swinging over her chest. Alicia Warner, terminal operations supervisor. Her calm, trained eyes scanned the scene in one sweep. The crowd, the child on the floor, the trembling insulin pouch. "What happening here?" she asked, voice firm but neutral. Linda spoke first, too quickly. "There's medication, needs clearance. We weren't sure." Grace cut in with professional precision. "My son is hypoglycemic. His medication was confiscated without cause. I presented documentation. He is failing fast." Alicia crouched beside Marcus, assessing with swift, practiced attention. "What's his blood sugar?" Grace answered without hesitation. 52 and dropping." Alicia inhaled sharply. Not dramatic, but unmistakable. She stood and turned to Trevor. Why wasn't this returned immediately? Trevor's mouth tightened. "Security protocol. I was following. The TSA medical exemption covers insulin and cooling packs," Alicia said, tone clipped. "Gate staff are not authorized to override medical necessity." Grace watched Trevor pale. A small vindication, but not victory. "Not yet." Alicia reached for the pouch. Trevor stepped back. Gasps rippled through the passengers. His voice came out strained, too loud. "She threatened me. Flashed a badge like she owned the place. I was trying to maintain order. We can't just let people like her." He stopped. He heard the words too late. The terminal fell silent. Grace's face remained composed, but something in her eyes changed. Not anger, but resolve. Slowly, she reached into her jacket. The badge appeared again. Cool leather, gold seal, catching the fluorescent light. 1 second. 2. Then she flipped it open. Clear. Undeniable. Special Agent. Federal Bureau of Investigation. The phone's recording all blinked back, unwavering. Alicia exhaled in disbelief. You're law enforcement." Grace nodded. "Yes. Traveling for federal testimony in Washington. If we miss this flight, a 2-year investigation stalls. But right now, all that matters is my son." Marcus whimpered, barely conscious. Alicia's tone changed. "Quick decisions now. No wasted breath." "Trevor, hand over the medication." "Now." He hesitated, power slipping from his grasp, control dissolving, and everyone could see it. His voice, when it came, was small. She made me look stupid. Everyone's filming. I can't." Grace stepped closer. Not threatening. just human. You can fix this. Right here. Right now. Trevor stared at the pouch. Something broke, pride, maybe. Or fear. He extended it forward. But before Grace could reach it, a new voice cut through, a deep male tone at the gate entrance. Agent Williams? I'm Officer Mark Holloway, Airport Police. You requested assistance. Every head turned. Two uniformed officers stood just inside the rope line. Trevor froze, pouch still midair. Alicia straightened. Yes? We have a medical emergency and possible civil rights concern. Phones lifted higher. A story, no longer private, was unfolding publicly. Grace did not look away from Trevor. Not a single blink. Her next words could either defuse everything or ignite the turning point of the narrative. She spoke softly. I just need the insulin. Give it, and this stops here. Trevor's arm shook. The pouch hovered between redemption and ruin, and then his fingers loosened. The insulin pouch fell into Alicia's waiting hand with the soft, decisive sound of surrender, fabric against skin, nothing dramatic, but loud enough that every witness felt it. Grace moved instantly. She uncapped the injector cartridge with practiced speed, drew the insulin, and pressed it into Marcus's thigh. Her hand was steady, though her pulse raced beneath her skin. Carolyn held Marcus upright, murmuring steady reassurance. 1, 2, breathe through it, sweetheart. 3. Marcus twitched at the needle's sting, eyelids fluttering. His breathing hitched, then slowly steadied into shallow but rhythmic gasps. Color didn't return yet, but the slow decline had been halted. Grace exhaled shakily, forehead resting against her son's for a brief, private second. Relief came like warm tide water, but she couldn't sink into it. Not yet. Officer Holloway approached, calm but observant. Ma'am, is he stabilizing? Grace nodded. He will be, if we get glucose on board soon. He needs a seat, water, and monitoring. Holloway turned to Trevor, his voice neutral. I need your account of why this medication was confiscated after TSA clearance. Trevor's lips parted, words faltering. I thought it was suspicious. People lie about medical stuff all the time. Holloway's gaze didn't waver. And you believed you could override a legal exemption protocol? Trevor swallowed, shrinking. I didn't mean harm. I was just doing my job. Grace rose slowly, placing a hand on Marcus's back. Doing your job should never conflict with saving a child's life, Mr. Miles. Linda stepped forward, timid but resolute. I told him to return it. He refused. Alicia nodded in confirmation. And he used language inappropriate for staff conduct. Phones recorded. Eyes watched. The truth was no longer confined to whispers. Trevor's cheeks flushed, streaked with shame. I made a mistake. I panicked. He looked at Marcus for the first time, truly looked. The boy shivered faintly, leaning into his mother's arm like a branch bent by wind. Something shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but recognition. Alicia faced Grace professionally. Agent Williams, your boarding is still open for 6 minutes. We'll fast-track you. We'll seat you first. A tremor of relief crossed Grace's face. Washington was still possible. The testimony still alive. But another weight lingered, not just personal, but systemic. Because this wasn't only about a single mistake. It was about how easily authority could tilt into harm. How quickly assumptions could threaten a life. Grace lifted her eyes to Trevor. Her tone stayed soft, but it carried. I don't want your job, Trevor. I don't want headlines. I want change. Real change. So no mother stands where I stood today. The words struck deeper than accusation would have. Trevor blinked hard. Shame, reflection, fear, all mixed. Holloway stepped closer. There will be an incident report. Statements collected. Ms. Warner, please provide video copies and staff logs. Alicia nodded sharply. Yes, officer. Gate surveillance will be shared. Marcus's hand twitched. Small movement, but movement. Mom thirsty. Grace's eyes glistened. We're boarding now, baby. As Alicia guided them toward the jetway, Trevor remained rooted, pale and silent, the weight of his choices settling like winter frost on his shoulders. But something unexpected flickered there too, possibility. Because Grace had not crushed him. She had offered accountability and a path forward. Still, consequences were coming, and a twist neither side yet saw. The jet bridge felt cooler, quieter, a narrow tunnel of humming lights and thin carpet. Marcus leaned against his mother, breathing more evenly now, though his shirt still clung damp to his back. Each step was progress, survival, recovery, forward motion. But the story was not done with them. As they reached the aircraft door, Alicia stopped Grace gently. "Before you board, there's something you should know." She lowered her voice. "We've already received a complaint call from a passenger in the lounge. They reported Trevor's comments. Terminal security flagged it for escalation. They want your statement immediately. And your badge number." Grace stiffened. A second front, opening just as the first closed. Holloway stepped up behind her. "This won't delay boarding yet, but they're monitoring. A civil rights case might be initiated if you confirm his words." Marcus swayed. Grace steadied him. She could make a single statement here that might end Trevor's career, today, tonight, permanently. Alicia waited. Holloway waited. Grace looked back through the open jet door. Seats. Safety. Washing. The case she'd spent 2 years building, a trafficking ring takedown briefing at 10 a.m. tomorrow. If she became the center of an airport rights investigation now, her testimony could be compromised by conflict of interest. The justice she fought for had two faces, her son's life and the lives she hoped to save through tomorrow's briefing. One truth did not erase the other. She inhaled slowly. "I'll give my statement," she said. "But it must be recorded accurately, in full, with no assumptions. Not vengeance, procedure." Officer Holloway nodded. "We can take it inside the aircraft. Captain will provide a space." Alicia motioned toward the cabin curtain. "First class galley." Quiet and supervised, Grace guided Marcus forward. Inside, the flight smelled of recirculated air and lemon disinfectant. Overhead bins clicking as early passengers stowed bags. A flight attendant, Heather, mid-40s, calm eyes, led them to a curtained space near the front. Heather knelt to Marcus's level. "I'll bring juice and crackers. We'll monitor every 10 minutes. You're safe now, sweetheart." Marcus managed a weak nod. "Thank you." Grace watched him sip the juice, color slowly returning to his cheeks. Relief washed over her, but caution remained. A storm had paused, not passed. Officer Holloway began the recorder. Agent Williams, for the record, described the event from the moment the medication was confiscated. Grace spoke clearly, without venom. "In my judgment, the attendant acted out of assumption rather than verification. I cannot determine intent, but the impact was nearly fatal. My son's life was endangered. I request procedural review, not punishment." Heather, standing nearby, blinked at that, surprised. She expected fury. Grace offered measured accountability instead. Holloway's brow lifted slightly. "Understood, Agent Williams. That will carry weight." He stopped the recorder. And then the twist arrived. Heather cleared her throat. "One more thing. There's a passenger 2 rows back who wants to speak with you. She says she recognizes your name." She wouldn't elaborate, only insisted it's urgent. Grace frowned. "My name isn't widely publicized." Heather hesitated. She said, "This isn't about today. It's about the Washington case." Grace felt the world still, mid-breath, mid-thought. Someone on this flight knew. Someone connected to the investigation. A stranger or a threat. The curtain rustled. A woman stepped forward, composed, mid-50s, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that held history. "Agent Williams," she said softly. "We need to talk. Now." Grace's hand instinctively moved toward where her badge and weapon permit rested. Marcus looked up, fear flickering. The stranger smiled gently, but her words reshaped everything. "I'm Assistant Director Evelyn Clark. I oversaw your case filing. And what happened at that gate? It cannot disappear quietly." Grace stood motionless, one arm still around Marcus, the other hovering near the inner pocket where her badge rested. Evelyn Clark was not a name one ignored, and certainly not a presence one mistook. Assistant Director. Internal Affairs Liaison. High Clearance Supervisory Authority. Evelyn's voice remained quiet, but firm enough that even the low hum of the aircraft seemed to fade around it. "You handled yourself with restraint today, Agent Williams. More restraint than most could manage." Her gaze moved briefly to Marcus, pale, recovering, vulnerable. "But that restraint puts you at a crossroads. Grace didn't blink. What crossroads? Evelyn stepped closer, lowering her voice so that only Grace, Marcus, Holloway, and Heather heard. HQ already knows. Passenger footage is circulating internally. Staff shared it up the chain. If this becomes public, we're looking at a national inquiry into discrimination at federally regulated transport points. A beat, which could derail tomorrow's trafficking briefing entirely. There it was, the second blade of the twist. Grace felt it land. Save her case or pursue systemic accountability. One protected a future of justice. The other exposed how bias nearly killed her son. Two truths, both necessary. But time would not allow both to proceed quietly. Evelyn's eyes softened, not cold, not distant. A woman who had carried her own wars. You have leverage, Agent Williams. Your testimony tomorrow could change countless lives. But if you push the civil rights filing now, every opposing counsel will weaponize conflict of interest. Your case will pause, maybe months. Marcus sipped juice again, hands steadier now. His eyes, clearer, lifted to hers. Mom, are we still going to help those kids tomorrow? Grace's breath trembled. Just once. Holloway shifted behind her. We can move forward with internal discipline alone if you don't escalate. Trevor would be placed under review. Retraining. Probation. But no national scrutiny. Heather spoke softly. As a mother, I watched what happened. I want change too. But you shouldn't have to carry the whole system on your back alone. Evelyn folded her hands. Your decision must be documented now, before we leave the ground. The engines rumbled, the plane alive, ready to push back. Time shrinking again. Not for Insulin, for justice itself. Grace looked toward the jetway. Trevor still stood outside, surrounded by officers and staff, small against the window glare. No defiance now. Just a man realizing his choices mattered more than he ever understood. She thought of the girls whose testimonies awaited her in D.C. names she knew by heart. Faces she had promised protection. Marcus leaned his head against her shoulder. Warm now, breathing steady. Her voice, when it came, was soft but unshakable. I won't bury this. Not quietly. But I also won't let it destroy the case. Evelyn listened. I want dual action. Internal corrective review, immediate. And after tomorrow's briefing concludes, I will file a formal civil rights report with recorded evidence. Not to ruin a career, but to change a protocol. Evelyn's eyes warmed, approval, respect. That is measured, strategic. And it will stand. Grace turned to Holloway. I need written confirmation of today's incident before wheels up. You'll have it, he replied, already moving. Heather nodded. We'll protect your son for the duration of the flight. Marcus smiled faintly, fragile courage. Grace squeezed his hand. Tomorrow would bring justice outward. Tonight, justice would begin at 30,000 feet. Takeoff came with a long, rising hum, engines pushing them upward through clouds streaked gold by a setting sun. The seatbelt light glowed overhead, soft and steady. Marcus rested with a blanket tucked around him, juice finished, cheeks warming back toward healthy color. Grace kept one eye on his breathing and the other on her open notebook, documenting, timestamping, recording every factual detail. Evelyn sat in the adjacent aisle seat, reviewing procedures on her tablet. A quiet partnership had formed, not born of scandal, but of purpose. Halfway through the climb, Holloway returned to the cabin with a printed incident summary. He approached with a careful, respectful tone. Agent Williams, here is the written record. Supervisor Warner and Attendant Linda verified the sequence of events. Trevor Miles has been placed off roster for the remainder of the day. A temporary duty review begins immediately. Grace accepted the document. Clear text. Confirmed witness statements. No embellishment. No minimization. She breathed out, a slow release of tension accumulated over a very long hour. Thank you, officer. This is the first step. The captain made an announcement then, routine, neutral, unaware of everything that preceded flight. Ladies and gentlemen, we are cruising at 31,000 feet. Refreshments will be served shortly. Heather returned with crackers and water from Marcus, kneeling to his level. I'll check on you often, okay? You're doing so well. Marcus smiled, small but genuine. Thank you, Ms. Heather. Heather's expression softened. You're strong. Braver than you know. Grace blinked back a swell of emotion. She had seen courage in courtrooms, in witness rooms, in raids. But this, her son fighting his way back, was courage she felt down to bone and breath. Across the aisle, Evelyn spoke quietly. You show them strength with dignity. People will remember that more than anger. Grace nodded. I don't want Trevor destroyed. I want him educated. Changed. Evelyn's gaze held hers. And because you said that, because you meant that, your voice in this inquiry will matter more than anyone else's. A flight attendant approached with a digital tablet for signatures. Agent Williams, we need your acknowledgement for emergency medical protocol invocation. Grace signed. Official. Immutable. But then, something unexpected. The attendant handed her a blank passenger feedback form. We've never had a situation like this. If you want to recommend procedural improvements, we will listen. Grace stared at the form. A simple sheet, yet a door to reform. She wrote just one line. Train for compassion as seriously as for compliance. Heather read it and nodded with quiet conviction. As night edged across the sky, Marcus leaned against Grace's side, eyes heavy but steady. Mom, you're still testifying tomorrow, right? Grace brushed a kiss across his temple. Yes, sweetheart. And because of today, when I speak, more people will hear. Lights dimmed. The cabin settled into calm, a stark contrast to the chaos left behind. But the world would learn of that chaos soon. Not in fury, but in truth. A truth already in motion, beyond control or containment. Morning arrived over Washington, D.C. with pale blue light spilling between hotel curtains. Marcus slept in the adjoining room, steady breaths rising and falling beneath crisp sheets. His glucose monitor blinked calm green, a quiet victory after yesterday's storm. Grace stood by the window, coffee cooling in her hand, watching the Capitol wake, traffic beginning its slow pulse, runners crossing early sidewalks, federal buildings catching the day's first gold. Today mattered. Too many voices had waited too long for justice. At 9:07 a.m., Evelyn knocked once and entered. Car is ready. Panel convenes at 10. Media restricted for now, but internal eyes are wide open. Grace set her cup down, calm controlled. Good. They should be. Marcus appeared moments later, dressed neatly, backpack slung over one shoulder. Stronger. Brighter. Can I come to the building with you? I'll sit outside if I have to. Grace hesitated, protective instinct versus growing independence, then nodded. You can. You earned that seat yesterday. During the drive, city blocks rolled by, monuments, marble columns, bus stops marked with morning news flyers. And one, taped to a light pole, stopped Grace's breath. Witnesses speak out, child denied medication at DFW, not headline. Not scandal. A thread. A whisper, beginning its climb. Evelyn noticed her gaze. That will grow. Slowly. Carefully. With your guidance. They reached the federal building. Security cleared them through private access. Marcus waited in a reception room with coloring pencils and apple juice. A child, yet no longer shielded from the larger world. Inside the conference chamber, 8 officials sat behind long desks. Microphones. No pets. Authority. Grace placed a prepared binder down, but her voice, when she began, needed no notes. She testified clearly, every fact sharp, every name pronounced with respect. Victims. Evidence trails. Arrest warrants the waiting signatures. The trafficking ring structure laid bare like broken glass under clean light. Evelyn watched with steady eyes, proud, anchored. And when Grace finished, a silence hung, not from doubt, but gravity. The presiding director spoke. Agent Williams, your work reflects uncommon integrity. Yesterday's incident at Dallas has been reviewed alongside your testimony. Not as conflict, but as character. A moment. Breath. You confronted discrimination with dignity. You protected your son without weaponizing your badge. And you chose systemic reform over personal retaliation. That is service, not silence. A unanimous vote passed. The operation approved. Funding reinforced. Task force expanded. Grace closed her binder, a quiet exhale releasing 2 years of effort. Outside, Marcus looked up expectantly. How did it go? Grace knelt, meeting his eyes. We made change happen. Here, and at the airport. And more will come. Marcus slipped his hand into hers, small, warm, certain. Then it was worth it. Grace pulled him close. Not because he needed strength, but because she did. Their next chapter had already begun. 3 months later, spring sunlight poured across Dallas-Fort Worth like a fresh beginning. Terminal C looked different now. New posters near security, clearer signage at gates, staff interaction guidelines framed in bold print. Grace walked slowly beside Marcus, hand resting lightly at his shoulder. He was taller now, stronger. His pump blinked a calm green beneath his jacket, rhythm steady as a heartbeat. They weren't rushing to a flight this time, just passing through on their way to visit Grace's sister in Houston, a simple trip, but one that carried memory like a shadow behind sunlight. As they neared gate C-18, a man stepped forward, shoulders squared, uniform crisp, expression quieter than she remembered. Trevor Miles. He stopped a respectful distance away. Agent Williams. Marcus. His voice steady, but humbled. I wasn't sure I'd see you again. Marcus gave a small nod. You look different. Trevor managed a faint smile. I am. They reassigned me to training for 2 months. Bias prevention, medical accommodation, crisis response. Hard lessons. Necessary ones. I wanted to tell you, thank you for choosing accountability instead of destruction. Grace studied him. Every measured breath, every careful word. You understand now why it mattered. Trevor nodded slowly. That pouch wasn't just medicine. It was a lifeline. And policies mean nothing if we forget the people they're meant to serve. He hesitated, voice softer. I'm sorry. Truly. Grace held his gaze for a long moment, then offered her hand. Trevor swallowed, shook it carefully, not rushed, not relieved, but sincere. Beside them, a new display screen flickered with a training announcement. Staff update, medical exemption protocols, compassion and compliance review required for all gate personnel, a monthly refresher sessions. Trevor followed their glance. It's because of your report and your testimony. Not just in Washington. Here, Grace's badge, her signature of authority, remained tucked away today. No need to flash it. No need to defend with it. Marcus asked gently, do you think it won't happen to someone else now? Trevor breathed out, not certainty, but resolve. Not if we keep learning. And if people keep speaking up like you did. A boarding call sounded overhead, calm, orderly. Travelers moved past without tension or whispers. Marcus squeezed his mother's hand. I still remember how scared I was. Grace leaned down, pressing a kiss to his forehead. And how brave you were anyway. They moved toward their gate, slow steps, no rush, and she glanced back only once. Trevor stood with another new attendant, showing protocol forms, walking them through medical exemption procedures step by step. His tone patient, his posture open. Change, small but real, growing in the same place pain once lived. Grace tucked her badge case deeper into her bag. Metal cool against palm. 3 appearances as the rules allowed. Past, power, and now peace. Marcus looked up at her as they boarded, smiling. You think Dad would have been proud today? Grace's eyes softened. I think he's proud every day we choose courage. They took their seats. Not first class, not escorted, just mother and son, whole and steady, as the aircraft rose toward clear skies and better futures. Andy, thanks for watching.